Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about insight meditation or Vipassana. Some of you may be new to insight meditation and haven't practiced yet, so I will introduce the principles of insight meditation, what it is, why we practice, how it is practiced, when we should practice, and what we will get from practicing. Insight meditation is essential and beneficial, not only for Buddhists but for everyone. It is the teaching of the Buddha, who made this knowledge accessible to all of us in order to free us from suffering, and to provide an escape from the endless cycle of birth, death and rebirth, samsara. His teaching is for everyone of any race, sex, nationality or religion because it deals with our human mentality and physical form, which we all share, and it addresses the impacted feelings and associated thoughts that we take as our own and which torment us in the present moment. Attachment to these feelings and thoughts causes us continual suffering and deprives us of happiness. This is the nature of human life. What insight meditation is? The Buddha taught that this suffering arises from the body and mind, or the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formation or volition, and consciousness, and nothing else, not from other people or external events, circumstances or objects. Suffering arises when the body and mind are impacted by sense contact, feeling arises, and the mind attaches to and sinks into the feeling. This traps the mind and we are then unable to be in the present moment, because we are caught up by, attached to, thoughts and feelings. This process is constantly happening to all of us if we are not mindful. The Buddha summarized his profound insight in the Four Noble Truths. They are the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. Because the Buddha taught that suffering is caused by our own body and mind, the way out of suffering must only be concerned with our body and mind. We don't need temporary external things to be happy, because happiness from practicing insight meditation arises by simply objectively observing phenomena, the body and mind, until we see reality as it actually is, that everything is impermanent, doesn't last, suffering or dissatisfactory, things that arise and torment our mind and deteriorate, and not self. Phenomena can't be controlled by me. There is no need to be rich, live in luxury or look better than anyone else, because those things only bring temporary happiness. True happiness arises when we see and accept reality as it actually is. Then the mind releases itself from its attachment to feelings and thoughts and is free from mental conditioning and suffering. This is called enlightenment and is the goal of insight meditation or Vipassana. The Eightfold Noble Path, the way to practice, or the principle of practice, is outlined by the Eightfold Noble Path, as follows: 1. Right view. 2. Right thought. 3. Right speech. 4. Right action. 5. Right livelihood. 6. Right effort. 7. Right mindfulness. 8. Right concentration. Once we understand the principle of the practice of the Eightfold Noble Path, and we agree that it is something that we want to put into effect, we should begin to practice. How to practice? We practice insight meditation, or Vipassana, by objectively observing the truth, how phenomena actually are, of our body and mind with mindfulness and right concentration. We observe the truth over and over until we come to thoroughly accept it and realize that everything is truly impermanent, suffering and no self. There are 3 trainings of the mind needed to follow the Eightfold Noble Path. 1. The first is training in morality. 2. The second is training in concentration. 3. The third is training in wisdom. Morality is cultivating and practicing the 5 precepts. These are: 1. Abstaining from killing. 2. Abstaining from taking what does not belong to us. 3. Abstaining from sexual misconduct. 4. Abstaining from lying. 5. Abstaining from consuming intoxicants. These 5 precepts aid us in calming the mind and preventing unwanted entanglements and problems from arising. Again, it is critical to our practice of insight meditation that we cultivate and develop the 5 precepts. They will not only help us with our meditation but will also improve the quality of our lives in all areas. Once we are cultivating the 5 precepts and the mind has become calmer and more peaceful, with less anger, greed, and delusion, then we can begin to practice concentration, starting with mindfulness. The definition of mindfulness is that one is aware of the body and mind in the present moment. The Buddha identified 4 foundations of mindfulness, which are 1. Contemplation of the body. 2. Contemplation of feeling. 3. Contemplation of the mind. 4. Contemplation of Dhamma, phenomena. Note that 3 of the steps on the Eightfold Noble Path have to do with concentration, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Practicing mindfulness. To practice mindfulness, we need to find a base of mindfulness that we are comfortable with, one of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Otherwise, the mind will wander without direction. Choose a base of mindfulness to cultivate mindfulness by watching the mind that wanders off from and bring it back to the base, again and again. This right effort causes mindfulness to arise. When we chant, we may use the chanting as the base, or we can use the breath or body, anything that we can maintain awareness of. We can use any aspect of the body or mind as the base in our daily life, consciously and objectively, without becoming attached, observing thoughts that arise. The Buddha said there are 2 wrong paths we should not follow. One is tormenting the body, or suppressing or forcibly focusing the mind on one object or the base, instead of simply maintaining awareness of the object and bringing the mind back when it wanders. The second wrong path is the pursuit of sensual pleasure, becoming attached to form, sound, smell, taste or touch, and believing that true happiness will result. Sometimes we get lost in thoughts for a long time, we have lost awareness of the base. When this happens, if we focus and control the mind to stay at the base, it won't really be aware of the base because we are craving or desiring to cling to it. Instead, just be aware of the base comfortably, in a relaxed manner. If the mind wanders off and gets lost, let it. If it gets distracted, let it. If suffering from the 5 aggregates, body and mind, arises, let it. We're just supposed to be aware of it, just know it without worrying about it and bring it back to the base. Simply relax and let the body and mind do their thing, watch the mind that wanders off and always bring it back to the base. Practicing often, we'll develop a knower or observer mind. The knower mind is awake without wandering off and without suppressing or controlling the mind to be at the base. Once we have cultivated mindfulness, we will be consciously in the present moment. Therefore, a distracted or deluded mind or a mind that goes down the 2 wrong paths is actually useful for practicing mindfulness, because it lets us know that it is not at the base. The mind that is aware of its deluded state is a stable observer or a knower mind, and the wandering mind is the deluded mind, the object. Hence, when we realize that the mind has wandered off from the base, just know when this has happened and bring it back to the base, over and over again. The wandering mind is the object known by the knower mind. When we practice mindfulness, we're not looking for tranquility, equanimity, or peacefulness. We're just practicing to create the cause for mindfulness to arise. Persistent perception. A knower mind is wholesome, virtuous, and supporting the path to enlightenment, and a wandering mind is unwholesome, defiled, and leading to suffering. The knower mind, wholesomeness, and the wandering mind, unwholesomeness, can't both arise at the same time. Practicing mindfulness by knowing and returning to the base over and over is training the mind to be aware of phenomena, to detach from sensations and get back to the base. Each time we are aware that the mind has wandered off and bring it back to the base, one moment of mindfulness has arisen. This will cause persistent perception. When we're mindful with effort and aware of phenomena, persistent perception recognizes and records the contents of the mind in the subconscious, causing mindfulness to arise spontaneously. When you are angry, just know it, and bring the mind back to the base. When you are lazy, just know it, and bring the mind back to the base, and when you are bored, sleepy, or having wholesome or unwholesome thoughts, just know it and bring the mind back to the base. This is how we train the mind to awaken and objectively observe, by continually returning to the base. Then persistent perception will record the contents of the mind and cause right concentration to arise. Right concentration. Practicing often, we spontaneously gain mindfulness, which turns into right concentration, the knower mind or the mind objectively observing. Whenever there is contact at the six sense doors, the mind will be objectively observing at the base, and it will be comfortably aware of phenomena without controlling or forcing it to be at the base. This becomes right concentration with a good quality of mind, objectively observing and detached from sensations. We will still perceive feelings and sensations that arise from contact at the six sense doors, but because of the good quality of the mind, we won't be deluded by them and they won't become self. This is a benefit of the effort we put into training the mind. The mind is still aware of everything and is impacted by the six sense doors, but remains objectively observing, the knower mind. This is right concentration, which arises by itself as a result of practicing the four foundations of mindfulness. The knower mind is soft, light, quick and perfectly suited for the task of objective observation. The result of right concentration is that the mind is able to separate itself from its mentality, feeling, perception, and mental formation, and from the body. Then it will be able to see how the five aggregates arise at the six sense doors by objectively observing the contact at the five physical sense doors, which causes the mind to think, feeling, perception, mental formation, and like, dislike and craving. At this time there is no self, no others, just Dhamma or natural phenomena. The mind realizes that each phenomenon, effect, arises from its own cause. When we hear, see, touch, taste, or smell something, this will cause sensations or feelings of satisfaction, dissatisfaction, happiness or unhappiness, like or dislike to arise along with craving, which will control the mind to perform action, and the knower mind will see how this works. Therefore, when it is at the base with the knower mind, it will be aware of all contacts at the six sense doors that cause the mind to think. Then the mind will see how thought and dependent origination work together. It will see that mind and body have mutual effects and are related to each other. As an example, when we hear a sound, we may feel happy, and when we feel happy, we like it and we want it. Or, when someone scolds us and the ears hear it, this causes anger to arise. But if the mind is objectively observing at the base, we will be aware of but separate from the anger and the sound of someone scolding us. Practicing Insight Meditation, Vipassana. When right concentration is fully cultivated, the mind is spontaneously objectively observing at the base. The mind will be aware of all contacts at the six sense doors that cause it to think, and it will objectively observe the thoughts, feeling, perception, mental formation, like, dislike and craving, that arise, and see the three marks of existence, impermanence, suffering and no self. Insight meditation or vipassana means to see things, body and mind, the way they really are, impermanent, suffering, and no self. Then we will see how the five aggregates or six sense organs and dependent origination work together, that mind and body have mutual effects and are related to each other. When we practice insight meditation or Vipassana, and learn about the mind, body or form, and mental states that cause dissatisfaction, we will be able to detach from the suffering that we encounter. We will be able to separate the mind from the body and mental activities without clinging to a sense of me. Then the mind is objectively observing at the base and seeing the true nature of the five aggregates, that all of them are the same, impermanent, suffering and no self. The mind will become wiser and realize that the body and mind are themselves impermanent, suffering and no self, so why would one want to be attached to them? Then the mind will spontaneously eliminate the cause of suffering, which is craving, and will be free from attachment or suffering. We will then be able to be happy in the present moment and see the truth that the mind and body are impermanent, suffering, and can't be controlled because they arise from their own causes, and when the cause disappears, so will the body and mind. When we practice insight meditation wisdom, we will see the three marks of existence of the body and mind. The first mark of existence is impermanence, something that was not here, but now it is, or something that was here, but now is gone. This is impermanence. For example, suddenly a thought arises, and when we recognize it, it vanishes. This is impermanence. Or suddenly, my leg hurts and a little later the pain disappears. This is also impermanence. The second mark of existence is suffering, of which there are three kinds. The first kind is suffering from feeling, which arises after contact with one of the sense doors. The second is suffering because of the Four Noble Truths which every human being has to experience. These are birth, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair, encountering things that we don't like, separating from things we love, not getting what we want, old age and death. The third kind of suffering that arises from the five aggregates, which we call the suffering of the three marks of existence. Suffering from the three marks of existence is phenomena which arises, exists without end and torments the mind, phenomena that arises, deteriorates and cannot be maintained, and the form of its deterioration is uncertain. When suffering, such as pain, arises, we should acknowledge it and objectively observe it. The knower mind will separate the pain from the body, the pain is arising separately from the body. Then the knower mind, objectively observing, will see how we react to the pain. Like, dislike, craving or anger, suffering, may arise in reaction to the pain, and wisdom will see the three marks of existence. Always observe how the mind reacts to suffering. If we follow this practice, suffering won't torture the mind because the mind is separate and not attached to the pain. We'll realize that suffering can't stay forever, and it will deteriorate and disappear. For instance, when pain in the leg arises, it is impermanent because it suddenly arises and falls away. But sometimes it seems to exist permanently and does not disappear. When this occurs, the mind must be stable and objectively observe the pain at the base, and wisdom will see the suffering without attaching to it, just the way it is. The mind will react to the pain, it might be unhappy or angry or crave to change the posture. Just objectively observe these reactions and wisdom will see the three marks of existence. The third mark of existence is no self, which is the teaching that phenomena, body and mind, arise by their own causes, and if the cause disappears, so does the phenomena. There is no entity, human or animal or God, no permanent, underlying substance, or personal self. Phenomena just arise by their own causes, can't be controlled and finally pass away. By nature, things are impermanent, suffering, uncontrollable and not self. Seeing these three characteristics, the three marks of existence, is called wisdom, and it depends on which characteristic we happen to see at any given time. Some may see impermanence, suffering, no self, or all three. For those who are new to the practice of insight meditation, when the mind is objectively observing at the base, and a phenomenon, such as pain, arises, exists, for a long or short time, and finally disappears, if the mind doesn't realize that this is one of the three marks of existence, we should teach the mind that this is impermanence, suffering and no self. We can't just imagine that we see the three marks of existence, but the mind must actually see them. For instance, when pain arises in our leg when we sit down, if we have wisdom we will see impermanence, suffering and no self, the three marks of existence. The pain arises, stays a while and torments us, can't be controlled and finally fades away. Practice by objectively observing and cultivating mindfulness and wisdom over and over until the mind clearly sees the truth and understands it. Then the mind will become equanimous toward all five aggregates, causing it to spontaneously eliminate craving and clinging, and finally coming to the realization that it no longer wants to be attached to the body and can let it go and be free. Once the mind is free and realizes it, then there will be no more cause for suffering or consequences of past actions to cause us to be reborn in samsara. The task is done, and the result is freedom. So the benefits of insight meditation or Vipassana are that we can be in the present moment happily. We can let go of and separate the knower mind from the body and thought, feeling, perception, mental formation, and we can see things the way they are. Then we can let go of the suffering in samsara that arises in the present and which may arise in the future, and may lead us to reincarnate in one of the 31 realms. We will also clearly understand and see the cause and effect of contemplated action, or karma, accordingly. We will be able to let go of emotions that arise from contact with sense objects at the sixth sense doors no matter the circumstances or conditions, just like the lotus in the mud and water which is not touched by them. Therefore, when we truly know how to practice insight meditation with mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, we will be happy in the present moment and able to see that all forms, sounds, smells, tastes and sensations only cause us to become lost in suffering in samsara and are just temporary illusions of no self, and that life is temporary and dangerous. All defilements will be diminished and we will have happiness in the present moment, sufficient and complete, without the need for luxury or extravagance. We will be happier than anyone. This is insight meditation or Vipassana. To summarize, in order to practice insight meditation or Vipassana, we need to cultivate the mind to objectively observe and separate the knower mind from phenomena. Then the knower mind will see the contacts at the six sense doors that impact the mind to think, feeling, perception, mental formation, like, dislike and craving, and wisdom will see the three marks of existence, impermanence, suffering and no self. At this moment the mind is stable and objectively observing at the base without clinging or attachment. This will prevent the cause of suffering, craving and clinging, from arising. We will be free from suffering for that one moment, but in order to make this freedom permanent, we need to cultivate the 10 perfections, which are 1. Generosity, selflessly helping others. 2. Morality, practicing the precepts. 3. Renunciation, giving up our pleasures and habits to develop mindfulness. 4. Wisdom, seeing things just the way they are. It arises by practicing insight meditation. 5. Effort, cultivating wholesomeness and preventing and eliminating unwholesomeness. 6. Patience, dealing with situations and problems with wisdom and mindfulness. 7. Truthfulness, keeping your word and not lying to others or yourself. 8. Determination, concentrating on the goal of enlightenment. 9. Loving kindness, acting with compassion toward all beings. 10. Equanimity, accepting everything impartially. We cultivate the 10 perfections by trying to keep them in mind and applying them whenever situations in our life arise. The more we practice applying them, the more these good qualities will grow in us. When could I be more generous today? Could I let someone go first for a change? Could I smile more when I meet people, and could I let anger go when it arises without causing more problems? Could I help to improve someone's life by cheering them up? Could I do all of these things without concern for myself, without expecting something? Once our practice of insight meditation has progressed to the point where wisdom allows us to see the 3 marks of existence of phenomena, then all of the 10 perfections will arise in one mind, spontaneously. But until then we need to work on each of the 10 perfections separately and as often as we can. When we concentrate on cultivating one of the perfections, such as generosity, with mindfulness and wisdom, while continuing to practice the other perfections, then all of the perfections can arise simultaneously. As an example, if I am practicing generosity by selflessly helping a neighbor and that person is being rude, the other perfections can arise simultaneously, and perhaps wisdom will show that the person can't be helped, and that I am wasting my time. When we are born, we all encounter sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in things and people we don't love or want, which don't satisfy us, and we also experience the loss of things and people we do love and which satisfy us, and not getting what we want. Birth, aging, sickness and death are inevitable for everyone and are the truth of life. The Buddha concluded that all suffering originates from the 5 aggregates, body and mind. If we examine this concept carefully and clearly, we'll see that it's actually the mind and body themselves that suffer and cannot be controlled. We have been searching for happiness our whole life, pushing away suffering and running to imagined happiness. Happiness and suffering are the same because they both have the 3 characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and no self. Like suffering, happiness is caused by the 5 aggregates, and if it is our goal in life, we'll soon see that it doesn't last forever. If we push away suffering, we'll still suffer because when we push it away we're experiencing and clinging to aversion and hatred. The mind can't remain peaceful for any extended period, and neither suffering nor happiness lasts long. As a result of practicing insight meditation or Vipassana, we can gain permanent happiness and the ability to easily let go of feelings and emotions with no attachment and no self. The mind can have more freedom and happiness, both inside and out, and we'll be able to more easily be in the present moment. Through practicing, we'll be able to see these results by ourselves. With the development of wisdom and insight through practice, when we encounter obstacles or problems in life, mindfulness and wisdom will enable us to deal with them easily and with no attachment. The more one practices with effort and sees the 3 marks of existence of phenomena, the clearer and less attached the mind will become, and this will cause rapture to arise. Then the mind will become calm and stable and, objectively observing with effort, it will see things the way they really are and accept it and become equanimous to all phenomena, the 5 aggregates. At this point, practice with effort will lead us to freedom, and when you are aware of your freedom, you are enlightened. A healthy mind will cause the body to also be healthy, because they depend on each other. Most of our problems stem from the mind, and if we practice mindfulness and wisdom, observing the mind continually, you will see your own bad characteristics. The more you objectively observe these characteristics and how you act through body, speech and thought, the more you will notice that they decrease and happiness grows, and there will be no more bad consequences of your actions. Practicing insight meditation is the most relevant practice for walking the path to achieve permanent happiness. We'll be aware and objectively observe the mind before thinking, speaking and acting, and will know what is appropriate or not. Those who have a tendency to be talkative will talk less, those who are always frown will be more pleasant, those who get angry easily will show more loving kindness, those who are usually greedy will share more, and those who are deluded will have clearer minds with mindfulness. People who are close to us will see these changes, and those who upset us and the bad phenomena that we encounter in life will be good teachers to help us let us know which defilements we still have left. We'll gradually peel off our defilements with mindfulness, concentration and wisdom, and the 5 precepts will maintain the mind and body. Those who practice insight meditation must refrain from breaking the precepts because they know what is good and bad and the result of breaking them. Then loving kindness towards others will arise. I wish you all happiness and prosperity. May the Dhamma flourish in your life, and may you all have right view and walk in the right and direct path to be free from suffering in this lifetime. Anumodana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Trisikkha Meditation Center. Plant City, Florida, USA. When we are born, we all encounter sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in things and people we don't love or want, which don't satisfy us, and we also experience the loss of things and people we do love and which satisfy us, and not getting what we want. Birth, aging, sickness and death are inevitable for everyone and are the truth of life. The Buddha concluded that all suffering originates from the 5 aggregates, body and mind. If we examine this concept carefully and clearly, we'll see that it's actually the mind and body themselves that suffer and cannot be controlled. We have been searching for happiness our whole life, pushing away suffering and running to imagined happiness. Happiness and suffering are the same because they both have the 3 characteristics of impermanence, suffering, and no self. Like suffering, happiness is caused by the 5 aggregates, and if it is our goal in life, we'll soon see that it doesn't last forever. If we push away suffering, we'll still suffer because when we push it away we're experiencing and clinging to aversion and hatred. The mind can't remain peaceful for any extended period, and neither suffering nor happiness lasts long. As a result of practicing insight meditation or Vipassana, we can gain permanent happiness and the ability to easily let go of feelings and emotions with no attachment and no self. The mind can have more freedom and happiness, both inside and out, and we'll be able to more easily be in the present moment. Through practicing, we'll be able to see these results by ourselves. With the development of wisdom and insight through practice, when we encounter obstacles or problems in life, mindfulness and wisdom will enable us to deal with them easily and with no attachment. The more one practices with effort and sees the 3 marks of existence of phenomena, the clearer and less attached the mind will become, and this will cause rapture to arise. Then the mind will become calm and stable and, objectively observing with effort, it will see things the way they really are and accept it and become equanimous to all phenomena, the 5 aggregates. At this point, practice with effort will lead us to freedom, and when you are aware of your freedom, you are enlightened. A healthy mind will cause the body to also be healthy, because they depend on each other. Most of our problems stem from the mind, and if we practice mindfulness and wisdom, observing the mind continually, you will see your own bad characteristics. The more you objectively observe these characteristics and how you act through body, speech and thought, the more you will notice that they decrease and happiness grows, and there will be no more bad consequences of your actions. Practicing insight meditation is the most relevant practice for walking the path to achieve permanent happiness. We'll be aware and objectively observe the mind before thinking, speaking and acting, and will know what is appropriate or not. Those who have a tendency to be talkative will talk less, those who are always frowning will be more pleasant, those who get angry easily will show more loving kindness, those who are usually greedy will share more, and those who are deluded will have clearer minds with mindfulness. People who are close to us will see these changes, and those who upset us and the bad phenomena that we encounter in life will be good teachers to help let us know which defilements we still have left. We'll gradually peel off our defilements with mindfulness, concentration and wisdom, and the 5 precepts will maintain the mind and body. Those who practice insight meditation must refrain from breaking the precepts because they know what is good and bad and the result of breaking them. Then loving kindness towards others will arise. I wish you all happiness and prosperity. May the Dhamma flourish in your life, and may you all have right view and walk in the right and direct path to be free from suffering in this lifetime. Anumodana. Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu. Trisikkha Meditation Center. Plant City, Florida, USA.